Hey, what's up guys? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at K40's new Platinum100 windshield mount radar detector. Now, this detector, the Platinum100, it actually shares the same underlying platform as the Uniden DFR9, and this is going to be kind of important. The Uniden DFR9, it's a $200 detector, retails for $199. The K40 Platinum100 costs more than twice the price at $469. Additionally, if you get it with the optional wireless remote control here, that's going to cost you $559 or $90 more. Now, K40 has a history of selling radar detectors that are overpriced underperformers, and so the natural question is if this applies here to the Platinum100 as well. I mean, again, it does share the same platform with the $200 radar detector, but to be fair, the K40 version does have some additional features. Does that then justify spending more than twice the price? Well, in this video, we're going to take a closer look here at the Platinum100. We're going to take a look at the detector's design, its performance, the different features that it offers, as well as K40's wireless remote. It's the same remote that they use in their custom installed radar detectors, and now that it's available for their Platinum100, it's the first time that we have, a remote like this available for a windshield mount radar detector. So let's definitely take a look at this here too. All right, now to start us off, let's go ahead and fire up the detector and get familiar with it.
K40 scan active. GPS connected.
So as you can see, we've got a multicolor OLED display here on the front of the detector. On top of the detector, we've got a number of different buttons to control and customize the settings. We've also got the optional wireless remote, which duplicates most of the settings here. And then on the side of the detector, we've got our barrel connector here for the power port, as well as a headphone jack. And then on the other side of the detector, we've got a USB port here for updates, as well as another port, and this one's actually for the optional laser diffusers, or K40's laser jammers that can plug in here and integrate with their radar detector as well, so you get kind of integrated radar detector and laser jammer option. Now, the mount it comes with, it's a big kind of single suction cup mount like this. I'll go ahead and just pop it here back on the mount. And then the detector has a single front-facing antenna pointing out that way. It doesn't have a rear-facing antenna, so there's no arrows available here in the detector. Additionally, there's no Bluetooth built in for any sort of app integration either. And so overall, it's a fairly simple and straightforward detector, and it's available with the optional remote here if you'd like to pair it with the detector as well. Now, this radar detector, it's not actually manufactured by K40. It's produced by a South Korean manufacturer that produces radar detectors for a lot of different companies named Adawave. And as I mentioned before, the Platinum100 shares the same underlying platform as the Uniden DFR7 or DFR9. Now, for K40, the big change here is that with this platform, they've actually added an LNA, a low noise amplifier, which is going to actually boost the sensitivity in the ultimate range here of the detector. And so if you compare it to some of K40's previous generation products, like the windshield mount K40 RLS2, or their custom installed RL200DI and RL360DI, with the LNA that's available here in the Platinum100, as well as in their Platinum360, the custom installed version, K40 claims that you're going to see about a 40% increase in range, which is definitely nice. Now, starting off with testing the range, I went out and did a test recently with about 20 different radar detectors on a pretty difficult test course, picking up radar around a bend. Now, this test was done against a stocker DSR2X transmitting at 34.7, and as we know from previous tests, 34.7 tends to be a strong frequency for this platform, especially with the Uniden DFR7, 8, 9, etc. However, in my testing, I found that the Platinum100, it's actually a low-end performer. It produces bottom-of-the-barrel results. And surprisingly, it actually performed quite a bit worse than the Uniden DFR8 and 9 would. And I say it's surprising because the analog platform here used for these detectors tends to be pretty strong on 34.7, though it is weaker on certain other frequencies. And so I'd expect it to actually do pretty well here. But whatever Adawave has been doing for maybe K40's tuning, it looks like it just doesn't offer the same sensitivity here on the K40 version of this detector compared to what I see on the Uniden version of this detector. And so the performance of the Platinum100 isn't anywhere near what you would expect for a detector at this price point. Instead, it looks like it actually performs closer to a lower end radar detector. Now, that was only one test though, and so for that reason, I went back out to the Red Barn course and dropped it down to only 8 radar detectors, but I tested here on 33.8, 34.7, and 35.5. And I basically wanted to see how the Platinum100 would do relative to the competition on another test course and against a variety of different radar guns. And just to quickly summarize the results, on 33.8, it came in last place. On 34.7, it came in last place. On 35.5, it came in last place. Now, most of the detectors you'll notice alerted right around the same location, around 1,500 feet away. Things were pretty terrain limited here. At 1,500 feet, this gives you around 24 seconds of advanced warning before you get close enough to the officer, about 200 feet away, and he's able to register your speed. The K40 Platinum100, on the other hand, gave little to no advanced warning. Best case scenario, it gave me 3 seconds of advanced warning before the officer was able to get my speed. Then worst case scenario, it gave just 1 second of advance warning. Now this obviously had me really concerned. I thought maybe something could be wrong with my radar gun, because this is the kind of behavior I expect from maybe $100 radar detectors. And so I reran the Redenso DS1 just as a quick sanity check. And again, it was still giving me tons of advanced warning just like before. And so, yes, unfortunately, the Platinum100, it came in last place in every single radar gun that I've tested it against. I understand this detector has improved performance compared to previous gen K40 products, but clearly it still lags significantly behind the competition. Next, if we take a look at the radar detector's false alert filtering capability, subjectively in my experience, I'd rate it again as below average. Driving around, I get a lot of falses, for example, to different Mazda CX-5 SUVs, and surprisingly, also from pretty far away too. And in fact, before the K40, I was actually running the Cobra Dual Pro 360, and I just recently posted my review of that detector. That detector is priced the same as this K40 Platinum100, but does a much better job at false alert filtering and doesn't seem to have the same issues with the CX-5s. Plus, you're going to be getting some additional features like your directional arrows, your automatic GPS lockouts instead of manual, as well as Bluetooth for added app functionality. And this is going to be kind of a recurring theme that you're going to see here is that the K40, I mean, pretty much any detector that you're going to want to compare it to is going to be giving you longer range, fewer false alerts, and more useful features than this detector. Next, moving on to those GPS lockouts, the Platinum100 does offer that feature, and the way that it works is if you come across a stationary false alert from a shopping center or a speed sign, you can just press the mark button on top of the detector or the button on the remote, and the detector will then lock out that false alert so that the next time you come by, the detector is going to be muting that signal and you don't get alerted to the same false alerts every time you pass by the same location. And again, just to demo that real quick, we'll go ahead and create a lockout.
K muted.
So as you can see, it now says mute here on screen, muted the signal, and now it's going to be locked out for us. And the way the lockouts work here on this detector is wherever you create the lockout, it basically creates a GPS lockout zone, and any signals within a 1,500 foot radius are going to be locked out. And you'll actually notice when you enter a GPS lockout zone, even maybe before you see the signal, you'll actually then see mute show up again on the detector, letting you know that you're arriving in that location. And then when that signal pops up again, you'll actually notice that the detector is going to display the signal, but it would otherwise keep the signal muted for you. Now, this is the behavior that you would expect, but surprisingly, when I was doing some of my testing, I actually found sometimes that if it starts picking up a signal inside the lockout zone, and then you start driving and continue driving down the road, that signal will actually stay muted. In fact, if you keep driving down the road and maybe the signal disappears, but then it comes back, even outside of the lockout zone, your detector is still gonna stay silent. And when I was doing this testing, I thought maybe my detector's volume was turned down too low or something, so I actually made sure that, yeah, the detector is still turned on and the volume's up. And after that, it would resume alerting normally, but it seems like whatever K40 is doing here with their GPS lockout implementation, they're really aggressively trying to filter out false alerts, more so than I've seen with some other detectors. Now, something to note is that these lockouts are going to work for, say, X and K band, for example, but if you get a KA band alert or a laser alert, that the detector will alert you to.
KA band.
Now, testing this some more, I've noticed that the alert priority is actually based on signal strength, not on band. And so if you have maybe a strong K-band signal, but a weaker KA-band signal, you're not going to get the alert, even if that K-band signal is locked out. And you'll actually notice this kind of change back and forth. I personally like to prioritize band over signal strength so that KA-band alerts are always going to punch through, even if I'm next to a speed sign or something, but you don't have that option here with the K40. Now, we'll go ahead and unlock that false alert.
K muted, removed.
And we'll go ahead and mute that again. And the reason I wanted to do that is to go ahead and demonstrate the quiet ride functionality, or the low speed muting. Now, quiet ride is a really standard GPS based feature to where you can actually go in and change the low speed muting threshold. And you can do it here either through the detector itself, or you can actually do it here with the remote. You can see there's actually a shortcut button right here
set.
for quiet ride. And so if we press this,
Quiet ride off. 5, 10, 15, 20, 20, 30, 35.
you can actually go in and set the low speed muting threshold. So any signals below this
Quiet
speed,
ride set.
the detector is going to go ahead and mute those for you. And now you'll notice that when I come across any alert, that signal is going to be grayed out on screen. And you'll also see at the bottom that it says quiet ride 35 to let you know that it's muting the signal because you're, well, traveling slower than 35 miles per hour. Now, quiet ride, it's going to affect any radar or laser signals. So K, KA, laser, anything like that. You'll notice in that case, quiet ride is going to be affecting those signals as well. So something to notice here. Now, something that I found a little confusing initially is the fact that with quiet ride, when you encounter any of those signals, the detector is going to go ahead and mute that signal for you, but it's going to gray out the signal. Locked out signals are not going to be grayed out. Those would be displayed normally color if you're traveling above the quiet ride speed. Now, this is backwards from how other detectors tend to do it, and I prefer the other method because if a signal is grayed out, to me, that tells me that I've seen this signal before and it's not a threat. With this detector, if it's grayed out, it just means you're traveling at low speed. So it doesn't have any sort of indication that, hey, this is a signal you've seen before versus, oh, this is a new signal. And I like having that kind of differentiation, but you don't have that option here. It's pretty much just going to gray out all signals at low speed. It doesn't do anything to say this is a locked out signal or this is a new signal that you're seeing. And then as for the quiet ride adjustments themselves, again, you can do it here with the remote. I guess that's nice when you're
35.
maybe first setting up your detector.
20, 20, 20, 35.
But personally, I just dial it in and set it to 35, and I never really change it again. And so I guess it's nice having a shortcut here on the remote, but it's not something that I would actually really use in practice. Now, when it comes to manually muting signals, when they do pop up, the way that that works is, well, when the signal arises,
Mute on.
you just push the mute button like that, and it's going to go ahead and just mute the signal for you, but it's going to continue muting all signals for 30 seconds after you pass, or after you press the mute button. Now, something to be aware of is you can see that K-band signal is gone, but let's say I get a KA-band signal now. Well, that signal is going to be muted too because I muted the K-band signal before. That could be really risky and could easily lead to a ticket if it's still muting itself because you pressed mute to mute that K-band alert previously. Now, there is a mute feature that I like that you can activate by pressing and holding the mute button here for 3 seconds when the detector is at idle.
Extended mute on.
And what this is going to do is it's basically going to be muting all signals for you for the next 5 minutes, K or KA band intentionally. And this can be nice. Let's say you're on a phone call and you just really want to make sure the detector stays quiet. You can just kind of activate this feature, and for the next 5 minutes, the detector will stay completely silent. And you'll see if I trigger KA band here, for example, the detector is going to be muted. And of course, this applies to other bands as well. I first saw this feature actually in the Redenso XP, which is also an add-a-wave detector, and it looks like this feature is also available here on the K40 Platinum100 as well. It's a feature that I find pretty helpful, and I'm glad to see that K40 now has this too. Now, as for the audio tones themselves, they're kind of annoying and obnoxious. I mean, the reason I bring it up is I test lots of different radar detectors. I run a different detector every couple days, and we were driving down the road the other day and it went off to KA band, and my wife was commenting that these are actually some of the most annoying KA band alerts out of any detector that she's ever seen. And so it's effective, but maybe something to note. So if you don't like that audio tone, of course, this is going to be completely subjective and it varies from one person to another. But if maybe people that you're driving with or you yourself are annoyed by tones like this would be something else to consider. And then as far as some additional false alert filtering capabilities, if you look on the top of the detector, as you can see, there's a dedicated button here for filter.
City.
And if you press that, it's going to allow you to switch between kind of different detection modes or different sensitivity levels here for the detector. And you can do the same thing here with the city or highway mode button on the remote.
Filter. Auto. Highway.
Now, as far as the different modes,
Highway.
you've got highway mode, which is going to be full sensitivity on all bands at all times.
City.
You've got city mode, which is going to be reducing the range and sensitivity of the detector on XK and on KA band by about 20%. You're going to be getting about 20% less sensitivity. And yes, this applies to KA band as well.
Filter.
And then you've also got filter mode here, which is going to disable X band altogether, plus give you even more of a range drop against K and on KA band.
Auto.
Now the auto mode here, the way this works is it basically switches between the 3 different sensitivity modes depending on the speed that you're traveling. So you can think of it as if you're traveling on the highway above 55 miles an hour, you get full sensitivity. And then as you start traveling slower and slower, it starts reducing the sensitivity of the detector. Now, if we go into the menu for the detector,
Menu.
I also want to point out some of the segmentation options that we have here, starting with K-band.
K-band off. K extended. K narrow. K wide.
So you can adjust the frequency range the detector is scanning for. K wide is going to be your traditional one.
K narrow.
K narrow is going to be giving you a narrower range of frequencies, which is a lot of times what I like to do to maybe cut out some false alerts if there's not a lot of K-band in your area.
K extended.
And then K extended is pretty cool if you want to get lower end K-band scanning down to about 23.950 or so. It's cool to see that this is available here on this detector now as well. This used to be missing on some of the Attawave detectors, and they've started adding it recently. And so if you encounter any sort of lower end K-band, especially for different photo radar applications, this detector can pick that up. Now for Ka band, we can have the detector scan all of Ka band if you like, or
Ka narrow.
you can do Ka narrow like this, which is going to be restricting the range of frequencies that the detector scans for. And with the Platinum 100, it's going to be scanning for 33.8, 34.7, and 35.5 plus minus 100 megahertz. The idea here is it's going to be not bothering scanning any unnecessary frequency ranges where you're going to only otherwise see false alerts on Ka band. Plus, it helps to boost the performance of the detector because it's not wasting time scanning frequency ranges that you don't necessarily need. However, the frequency ranges that it's scanning for on Ka narrow are a little bit too tight in my opinion, especially for 34.7. 34.7 guns tend to drift in frequency more, and so you're actually going to need wider sweeps for 34.7, and that's why on the unit detectors, for example, for 34.7, their Ka narrow actually gives you a wider sweep versus on the K40 version, it's going to be only a plus minus 100 megahertz. And for that reason, you are going to be potentially risking not detecting certain Ka band guns that could potentially be used in your area. We see a lot of them in New York, and we see them throughout the rest of the country as well. And so for safety, you may actually be better off running the detector in Ka wide. When I was doing my testing, I was testing in Ka narrow for the improved performance, and as you saw, even with that, it still didn't have the best range, but for safety, Ka wide may actually be the way to go because of the narrow segments that it uses here for Ka band. And speaking of those Ka falses, I have seen some here with the detector. The detector does have Ka band filtering available to filter out some of these false alerts, but then that starts to further compromise the detector's performance. And with the limited sensitivity, you kind of want to start disabling some of those filters. So just something to be aware of here as far as kind of optimizing the detector settings. False alert filtering, you're going to be getting some, and there's only so much sensitivity that you have here with the detector in the first place, but yeah, it does have Ka band segmentation available. Next, you'll also notice the detector has an option here for MRCD. Now, MRCD, or the MultaRadar CD, it is a type of photo radar system that's used mostly in Canada, but also in a couple places here in the United States. This is designed to detect both the MRCD and the MRCT, and I'm actually pretty excited to see it available here on the Platinum 100, primarily because if they can add it here to this platform, then perhaps we would also be able to one day see it on the unit version of the detectors here. However, when I started testing it out, I found that the Platinum 100 actually falses to MRCD a lot, more than any other detector that I've tested with and run so far. In fact, due to the frequent falsing on MRCD, this is actually the fastest that I've ever gone and disabled MRCD detection with any detector. And again, that's also with the MRCD filter turned on. And so while, yes, I was initially excited to see that MRCD is available as an option, due to the false alerts, I don't think it's going to be that usable in practice. And so now I'm not as excited as seeing it maybe one day coming over to the unit versions of the detector. I don't have MRCD here in use in my area, so I wasn't able to detect or to test detection range or anything, but the false alerts, in my experience, would make this feature otherwise unusable. Now, speaking of different photo radar type systems and photo speed camera operation, the detector lacks any sort of red light camera alerts or speed camera alerts, despite the fact that it actually has GPS built into the detector. That was really surprising. Like literally every other GPS-based detector has these features. So when you come across a stationary red light camera or a speed camera, there's a database in the detector and it just alerts you to those systems, especially because a lot of times those cameras don't rely on radar or anything, and so you're not otherwise going to be getting any alerts. Instead, with this detector, what K40 recommends is that you use the mark button here on the detector. And the idea is if you come across maybe a red light camera, you have to then go and mark it.
Marked to alert.
And so if you pass one of those yourself and you notice it, you can go and mark it like this, and it'll actually notify you every time you come by. And then if you want to delete that alert, you can also press and hold the mark button and make it go away.
Marked location removed.
Personally, I would actually rather have the radar detector manufacturer just have a database built in, and I just periodically update the detector. However, to do that does cost the manufacturer money. They usually outsource that database information to third parties, and then every time they want to release an update for you to download to your detector, they have to pay for every single update. And so by not having this feature built in, it's kind of, I guess, a cost-saving measure that's kind of built into the Platinum 100. But it's surprising because literally any other GPS-based radar detector is going to offer this feature. So it's really surprising to see the Platinum 100 missing what's otherwise a very standard feature to offer. Next, when it comes to stealthiness, against my Spectre 3, this Platinum 100 actually does a surprisingly good job. Far away, the Spectre is not going to go off, but once the officer does get a little bit closer, they are going to get a couple blips as they pass the car. Because it's a non-aero detector, it does seem stealthier from behind than from the front. And I do see a little bit longer alert distance when I crank it up to max sensitivity. But either way, it actually does quite a good job here, and I suspect a big reason of this is actually the LNA that's installed in the detector. Now, I've noticed the Platinum 100 is stealthier than a lot of the competition, such as the Max 3, which is definitely not stealth, as well as even detectors like the Uniden R3 or the Redenso DS1. It's admittedly not a huge difference because an officer still can pick up the Platinum 100 if they get really close. It's not going to be fully stealth like I see with detectors like the Redline 360C or the V1 Gen 2, but it actually does do a surprisingly good job here. Overall, this is a very difficult detector for different Spectres to pick up. So as you can tell, this detector is not 100% stealth, but it is pretty close. And so if you drive in an area like Virginia or Washington, D.C., and you need the stealth functionality, this detector could potentially check the box. So good job here, K40. Now, as far as the mount itself, as you can notice, it's pretty tall and bulky here like this. I'm not entirely sure why. It's definitely taller than you'll notice with any of the other manufacturers that use this similar type of single suction cup mount. And I don't know why it's so big. I mean, I can't actually hang it up by my rear view mirror because it hangs down too low and actually blocks visibility out the back. Additionally, I've also noticed that there's a fair amount of vibration here in the mount as well, and you'll definitely notice this while you're driving. Definitely on bumpier roads, but even on smoother roads, you'll see this detector actually bouncing quite a bit here on your windshield. And personally, I prefer a much more solid and actually compact mount so that I can fit it kind of wherever I want without it being so bulky and maybe blocking visibility. Now, as far as K40's laser integration, yes, they offer their Defuser optics laser jammers, or they call them laser diffusers, same exact thing, just terminology difference. And that you can actually have it plugged directly into the side of the detector. Now, traditionally, to get this kind of integration to where your radar detector and laser jammer can integrate, you would usually need to go for a custom installed radar detector, which is going to be much more expensive. We've started seeing this integration starting to come out from Escort, for example, which now offers this with most of their windshield mount radar detectors. Additionally, if you have a Valentine one, it can actually wirelessly integrate with the TMG laser jammer if you're using the Android app JBV1. And K40 offers this type of integration now. It's a wired solution that plugs in here to the side of the detector. It doesn't actually share the same power port the way that the Escort one does. There's actually a second dedicated port just for the laser jammer here on the K40 version. Now, unfortunately though, out of all the laser jammers available on the market, the K40 Defuser optics actually offers the worst performance available. Plus, K40 doesn't make updates available so that you can improve the laser jamming capabilities over time. Now, when it comes to controlling the laser jammers or the diffusers, if we turn them on here real quick,
Diffuser on.
There's a couple different ways to control how it automatically shuts off over time.
Laser constant transmit.
So you have the option to have it just jam indefinitely forever. This is really only to be used for testing purposes to where it never actually disarms.
Laser pulse transmit.
Now, pulse mode here is my recommended mode. It's basically going to jam for 5 seconds, and then after 5 seconds, it's going to automatically disarm your laser jammers and stay disarmed for 30 seconds. I'm really happy to see that they have an auto JTK function available like this, because even laser jammers that aren't that great can still work in certain instances. And so I'm really glad to see that they have the ability to jam and then eventually disarm, because that is really important, really critical. It's like the most important thing to know about using laser jammers. And I have a whole video dedicated to just that. Finally, the third option,
Laser receive only,
is laser receiving only or detection only. Basically, if you don't want the detector or the jammer to jam at all and you only want it to detect, you've got that option here too. And then if you're in any of the jamming modes, if you want to manually disarm your laser jammer, the way that you do that is just you hit the mute button when the laser alert pops up, and it's going to go ahead and disarm your laser jammers for you. Now, as far as those firmware updates and improvements that you can download over time, the way that it works here, because it's an at-away detector, it's going to be the same process as what you've seen with like your Uniden R3 and R7, for example. So the update software, it's going to look very familiar, even though it is a little bit different looking. The update software, it's only available for Windows. There is no Mac update software available here for the the Platinum100. Now, given all the issues that I've seen people have over the years updating with the Uniden version of this update software, I'm actually really glad to see that on K40's website, you'll see that they make a point to help with this and they provide their contact information, so in case you have any issues getting your detector updated, they're available to help you with that process. So good for you, K40. I'm really glad that you're making that available for people. And speaking of customer service in general, that's also something that traditionally K40 does a pretty good job at. They're available for you to call them, email them, text them, and they're pretty good at getting back to you and helping answer any questions. And customer service people, of course, they don't work for free. They need to get paid too, and that's probably part of where the money goes for when you're paying for this detector. It's got to pay the customer service agents. But at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of really big trade-offs here with the detector that, despite any good customer service, I don't think it makes sense to actually get this detector. But customer service, yeah, they do traditionally do a good job here. Now, finally, let's go ahead and take a closer look here at this remote. This is the thing that's kind of unique and special here for the Platinum100. It's the fact that you have a dedicated wireless remote here to control your detector. This isn't something that's available on any other windshield mount radar detector. Now, when I first heard about this, I figured, well, that's kind of redundant. You already have all the buttons here available on the detector. Why do you need a remote that pretty much duplicates all the buttons that's already available? It's different for custom installed radar detectors that don't have their own controls. That's where you need the remote because it's your only controller. Now, the main appeal of having a remote like this is in case you have the detector mounted in a place where maybe it's too hard to actually reach the detector. Some cars, of course, are bigger than others, so if you can't reach it for whatever reason, well, now you have a dedicated remote that makes it a lot easier to actually control the detector. Now, I was also thinking before I got the detector that if you have it mounted high like this, what if it presses up against the top of the car? You're not going to be able to press the buttons, but with the mount actually being so long, that's not really an issue. I guess it's more of like a distance thing. If you'd like the remote, it's a $90 add-on if you purchase it with the detector. If you want to purchase it separately, it's an additional $159 for the wireless remote. Additionally, K40 also makes a wired version of this remote if you like, but the wireless one is the one that's available as a package with the detector. Additionally, without having to run the wires, you wind up with the cleaner install, fewer wires around in your car. Driving around with it, I've noticed it's actually pretty easy to lose this remote. If I have it maybe mounted here and I'm trying to grab it, I kind of wind up like fumbling with it, trying to get it to work, and it's easy for it to get lost. I understand these things do get lost pretty often, and so the wired remote, well, you're not going to be able to lose the wired one that's maybe somewhere more permanently installed in your car. K40 actually ships this remote with a little clip that you can slide onto the back of the remote like this, and then you can take it and then attach it, a lot like a garage door opener, right up here to your sun visor, and now you have a way to actually control your detector without actually having to reach the detector itself. You can do it with kind of a dedicated control pad here like this. Now, this can be pretty convenient, of course, to have a remote that's, well, right there, as you can see. But because it's attached to your sun visor, I noticed if you're driving on a sunny day and you need to flip down your sun visor, well, now you've actually just lost access to the buttons on the remote. So something to note if you ever drive in an area where there's a lot of sun. Now, in practice, the main things that I actually use the buttons for, it's actually two things, and it involves muting the detector. When an alert goes off, if you want to mute your detector, well, you just press the mute button like that to lock out the detector, or to mute the detector. If you want to then create a lockout for that, you press the MM button.
K muted.
And it says K muted, and it's going to go ahead and lock out that signal for you. So muting signals when they pop up, and then kind of permanently locking out signals, those are the two main things that I actually use this remote for. Now, with other detectors, if you want a remote mute and lockout button, well, the power cable that it comes with already has that feature. There's a remote mute and lockout button. Press it once to mute, and then double press or triple press or long press, depending on the brand, and boom, you've got your lockout functionality. Same thing if you want a more permanent version that doesn't require using your cigarette lighter. Well, there's the smart hardwire cords. Escorts is about $30. Unidens is about $35. And again, same idea to where you just press the button to mute or double, triple, or long press to create your lockout. Now, with the K40 power cable, it's a very simple power cable. It's literally just power. There is no remote muting capability, and so you're going to either have to press the button on the detector or on the remote itself. Now, as far as other things that I may actually use the remote for, maybe to adjust the display brightness, for example, with the dim button. We've got a couple options here for that.
Dusk.
So you can kind of dim the display like this,
Night.
or make it even darker here in night mode.
Auto.
Auto mode is kind of weird here on this detector. The way that it's going to work is it's going to be basically bright all the time, day or night, surprisingly. It's not going to be adjusting the display's brightness depending on if it's daytime or nighttime. Instead, what it's going to do is when you get an alert,
KA band.
You'll notice it's going to be bright like this for 3 seconds, and then it's going to start to dim a little bit after 3 seconds. And then after another 3 seconds, it's going to go darker still. So that's what the auto brightness option does. Here, let's go ahead and mute this here real quick. So it has nothing to do with maybe making it darker at night and brighter in the daytime. When it's idling, it's just going to be full brightness here like this. And that too is also kind of unusual. Again, with most detectors, you have an ambient light sensor that's built in, and so it can get brighter in the daytime and darker at night. Or if a detector doesn't have that, but it has GPS, it relies on the time, which it can know by GPS. And so if it's nighttime, get darker. If it's daytime, get brighter. K40, you don't have that option. Again, they're kind of starting to cut some corners here with this detector. There's no ambient light sensor, and so they're relying on kind of other ways to manage different display brightness levels. The detector also has a stealth mode, which is basically going to have the display off, and you'll see these blinking lights here at the bottom of the display, which again, if you've ever seen a Uniden detector, it's the same thing, just available here on the K40. And then when you get the alert,
KA band. Mute on.
it just pops up here on screen like this, and then when the signal goes away, it returns kind of to your like dark stealth mode like this. And then finally, the last option, if you want to look at that too, the display off. So the display is kind of off completely, and then when you get an alert, I'm triggering it now, it's still muted from before, but as you can see, there's no signal here. Let's actually turn off the mute so that you can hear the alert.
Mute on.
We'll remute it here. And as you can see, there's no visual displays at all. It's just going to be completely dark, display completely off. I personally would just, I guess without those controls, maybe run it in day, and you wind up having to like manually change the display brightness, because again, there is no way to make it brighter in the daytime and darker at night. You're going to have to manually be changing your display brightness here yourself, and so you're going to be reliant, I guess, on this remote, or actually doing it here with the detector itself, because the detector, unlike other brands of detectors, it's not built to handle display brightness adjustments more intelligently, and so again, you're kind of reliant on this remote control here. And I feel like this too is a recurring theme here with the detector. They're cutting a lot of corners here with this platform. There's no ambient light sensor to do the automatic display brightness adjustments. The power cord itself is very simple. There's no remote alert LED or remote mute button to control the detector. The detector itself is based on a lower performing analog platform. It's why if you take a look at the detector, you'll see it's only a 2-digit frequency display instead of a 3-digit display. You're going to be getting poor detection range. You're going to be getting excessive false alerts, including on MRCD. You've got this kind of cheap, generic, big, bulky mount that it comes with. There's no red light cameras built in. There's no speed camera database, even though the detector has GPS. And so there's a lot of corners that are actually being cut here in this detector, despite the fact that it's an expensive detector. It retails, what, $469 for the detector, or $559 if you get it with the remote. Now, something else that K40 is known for is their speeding ticket guarantee, meaning in case you get a speeding ticket while running their detector, they'll actually pay for the ticket. There is a little bit of fine print to it, but it's something that K40 is known for. Now, something to note is it covers only the cost of the ticket. It doesn't cover things like your insurance premium hikes, which is oftentimes going to be a lot more than the ticket. It doesn't cover things like your legal expenses or lawyer fees, court costs, things like that. And then, of course, you're going to have to deal with all the headache and stuff of just dealing with the ticket and the pullover and all that stuff in addition. But yes, they do cover the speeding ticket itself. Personally, I prefer running a higher-end detector that allows me to just avoid all of that stuff in the first place and not have to deal with the insurance premium hikes and all that. But if a speeding ticket guarantee is important to you, I know there's other manufacturers that have started adding this as well. And so Escort now offers it, Redenso now offers it. So it's no longer just K40 that offers a speeding ticket guarantee. And so looking at this detector, I mean, I'm sitting here kind of wondering, like, is there something I'm missing? Because there's a lot of downsides to it. And this, again, has kind of been a recurring trend that I've noticed by testing a variety of different K40 products over the years. And it sometimes leaves me scratching my head, like, why are people actually buying these K40 detectors? And so I've actually been asking people. One of the common reasons that I hear is, well, K40 offers their speeding ticket guarantee, and so that then gives me confidence in that, well, this must be a good product, it must work well, and K40 stands behind their products if they're willing to offer a speeding ticket guarantee. And that's an understandable perspective. I think it's a good kind of like sales tool, a marketing tool to help encourage people to buy their detectors and add that extra peace of mind. Now, that said, I mean, Escort and Redenso also offer this feature, but like I mentioned personally, I would prefer a higher end detector, speeding ticket guarantee or not, that helps me avoid everything in the first place. Nevertheless, I understand it as a reason why people would offer it, but maybe it's less of a selling point now considering other companies have started adding this too. The other thing that I hear is a lot of maybe dealers and installers would be recommending a K40. And I was curious, okay, maybe let's talk to different dealers. Why do you recommend a K40? Well, they say that every manufacturer is going to be advertising the same things. Everybody says we've got extreme range and good false alert filtering and whatnot. And you'll see this on K40's website too, where they talk about it having the latest technology for long-range protection, and it's going to be giving you the very best speeding ticket protection available today. They talk about their low-noise amplifier, giving you increased range and sensitivity. And you'll see the same thing when they talk about its advanced filtering and how it's going to be the quietest radar and laser detector available today. It doesn't have long range, and it's definitely not the quietest radar detector available on the market. But if you look at just the marketing pages for pretty much any manufacturer, they're all going to talk about long range performance and great false alert filtering. That's totally normal. The other thing that a lot of dealers will actually bring up is the fact that with K40, they have much higher margins when they sell these detectors compared to other brands, other manufacturers. And if you start taking a look at the radar detectors, that actually starts to make sense. This Platinum 100 here, it's based on a lower end platform. They've further cut corners to save on cost. Then they jack up the price of the detector and make it a lot more expensive than it needs to be. And then they can take that margin, pass it on over to their dealers, and then their dealers are happy selling it and recommending the detectors. I'm not saying every dealer is doing this. I'm saying it's definitely an incentive to dealers if they think that every detector performs the same, it's all got long range performance, and it's all got great false alert filtering. If it's all otherwise the same, I might as well recommend the thing that, well, I make the most money out of. And I totally understand that perspective too. And so that, I think, is likely a possibility of why somebody may be recommended a K40 product, despite the fact that the performance and the features and the filtering are otherwise as limited as they are. You could then ask, well, Vortex, don't you test and review K40 products? I mean, yeah, I've been doing it for years, and I publish my reviews and stuff. And usually like this, they're not the most favorable reviews. I keep finding like, hey man, there's other stuff that's better. This stuff just doesn't perform very well. And it's interesting. I publish this in videos. I publish it in articles on my website. But if you go take a look at K40's website, for example, it's a little bit different as far as what they say. You'll notice they actually shared some information from one of my reviews, and they posted an image that has a lot of thumbs up as if I'm going to be liking the detector. But if you go take a look at their review, they're basically taking what I shared in the review, ignoring almost all of the bad stuff and taking just the good points, sometimes out of context, but only selecting the good stuff and only sharing that in their review. In my reviews, I like to really talk about both all the good things and all of the bad things, because there's nothing that has only bad things. There's nothing that has only good things. And you really need to know the whole picture to make an accurate assessment. I know, so I'm really trying to cover the good and the bad here. However, they've kind of modified and intentionally left out a lot of what I say to make it sound like I'm actually a big fan of some of their older generation products. And then they also conveniently forget to link back to the reviews that they're referencing here, where I actually share this information so people can't get a more complete understanding of the context and what I actually think about the product. And so they make it seem like I'm recommending and liking stuff that I honestly don't. Plus, if you go take a look at the bottom of kind of my review, quote unquote, they're also shutting down any comments so nobody can go on there and say, hey, this is not what Vortex said, and you left a lot of really critical information out. And so for that reason, let me be pretty clear about my stance here on the Platinum 100. I don't think that it's a bad detector. However, I think that literally any other radar detector that you can choose in this price point or with a comparable feature set is going to be a better choice. I think the Platinum 100 is probably the worst detector that you can choose in its class. And this is, again, based on a comparable feature set and comparable price point. If I was comparing this to like $100 detectors, that would be a different story, but this is a $469 detector, or $559 with the remote. The other detectors in the same class based on features or price point are going to be giving you longer range, fewer false alerts, plus some additional useful features, whether it's things like automatic GPS lockouts instead of manual, Bluetooth capabilities, or your directional arrows. There's better, cheaper detectors that are available, like the unit in DFR9 that's less than half the price. It's based on the same platform, but it gives you even longer detection range, plus it gives you features like Redlight camera and speed camera alerts. The DFR9, though, does lack certain features that the K40 version has. The K40 Platinum 100 adds your MRCD detection, but you get a ton of false alerts. It adds K40 laser diffuser integration, but K40's laser jammers are the worst performing laser jammers on the market, so ultimately not a big deal. And so for that reason, I don't think it makes sense to get a K40 Platinum 100. I mean, maybe one of the biggest selling points is having the remote here, because they left out an ambient light sensor, so you're gonna have to manually adjust the display brightness, because the power cable doesn't have a mute button, so you're gonna be reliant on the remote. And so, I mean, I guess if you really want a remote, sure, but then you've got so many other compromises and trade-offs to the radar detector that I don't think this makes up for running such low-end hardware and having such a compromised detector. Again, if you want remote muting capabilities, you can get another detector that has a mute button built into the power cord, or you can get a remote hardwire, which is going to cost a lot less than this wireless remote. And you're going to have the core functionality for muting signals or locking out signals. Yes, that's a wired option instead of a wireless one, so that is a difference. Other detectors are going to let you do this functionality maybe with Bluetooth, running an app, so you can mute your detector or lock out signals or change settings. So there's other ways of going about it other than getting, you know, this wireless remote here. So if you wanted to, you could buy a detector with the same platform, the DFR9, which is going to cost $199. You can get the remote hardwire cable, which is another $35, and you're winding up at $234. If you go for the K40 Platinum 100 with this remote, you're now spending $559. The united version will save you 58% off the price of the K40 version and give you longer detection range without getting you features like MRCD and laser detection or laser integration that aren't all that great in the first place. And then heck, at the price point that K40 is asking here for this detector, you can get literally any other radar detector on the market that's at the same price point, and you're going to be getting a better performing detector with fewer false alerts, and you're going to be getting a bunch of other useful features that aren't available here on the K40. And so looking at this detector, just like every other K40 product that I've ever looked at, the Platinum 100 is also going to be an overpriced underperformer. And so this trend seems to continue here with the Platinum 100. And so at the end of the day, should you get the detector? It's your money. It's your driver's license. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't actually make a difference to me what detector you buy. Buy any detector you want, whatever you think is going to be the best choice for you. I just want you to be able to make an informed decision, an educated decision. And based on my opinion, I'm one person, but based on my opinion, I wouldn't recommend this detector. I don't think it's worth it, and I think that literally any other radar detector that you could choose in this price point, and oftentimes a lot of less expensive detectors, are actually going to be better choices than the K40 Platinum 100. If you are looking for a good detector, take a look at the link in the video description to my radar detector buyer's guide. I go over my top picks at different price points with different features to help you choose the detector is best suited for you. And all of the detectors that I've listed there are detectors that I actually would recommend or run myself. Yeah, that's it for my thoughts for now. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Till then, stay safe, drive safe, and I'll see you in the next video.